Hey, welcome to On the Clock, a collaboration between the Packeted Podcast and the Draft Fellows. I'm Andrew Merding. That's Kyle Fellows. Together, we are the Draft Fellows, and leading up to the draft, we've been doing a series covering picks 1 through 32, each team's biggest need, and who they should be considering at their selection. You can check out the video of all the previous episodes on the Draft Fellows channel on YouTube. You can check out the audio versions on the Packaday Podcast audio channels, and we are all ready to pick 30. I don't know how this happened, but we are here. Buffalo Bills time.
We are here at 30. Bills. Bills are such a frustrating franchise because they are so close to winning it all the time. They just can't get over that hump. And so in the draft here, they could go in a lot of different directions to try to just do that thing that's going to get them there to where they've been trying to go to get past the Chiefs, get back past the Ravens the last couple of years. And so as they consider what is that would do that, they have some core needs. They have a group of receivers that's good, but you kind of wonder if they could add a little bit more to that spot. Keon Coleman will be looking to take a jump this year. They re-signed Khalil Shakir to a healthy deal, and then they brought in depth like Joshua Palmer and Curtis Samuel. But you just kind of wonder, maybe at the end of the first round, if there's a wide receiver that slips down to them, if they would consider that addition. But really, the Bills' biggest needs are probably on the defensive side of the ball. And there are several of them, right? The defensive line consists of Jaquan Jones and Ed Oliver, and then just not that much behind those guys. And so they could look to take advantage of this very talented defensive line class. At linebacker, Matt Milano is getting older, and I think that they'd like to upgrade over Terrell Burnand if they could do that. And then the Bills got a good season out of Christian Benford last year at corner. He was PFF's 6th graded cornerback. I did not realize that he had that great of a grade from PFF. That's a nice surprise that they have there. But Teron Johnson and Dane Jackson are huge question marks at corner, and that's why you see so many mocks with corners going to the Buffalo Bills. But a collection of different things that the Buffalo Bills could do at 30 when they're on the clock.
Yeah, and you mentioned Christian Benford, and he got paid, and
Yeah.
so did a lot of the Buffalo Bills, and they're investing in their homegrown talent. And so when you do that, it becomes really important for you to hit on your own picks because that's going to be your depth. Those are going to be your impact players because you're not going to be able to acquire a lot of talent from outside of your organization. And so, interestingly enough, we've been talking so much about how there just isn't like a perceived group of teams that would be clamoring to move up into the teens or early 20s.
Mm-hmm.
The Bills might be the exception to the rule because I do think that they could be a trade up candidate if somebody slides that they really love. So if there's somebody that they perceive as maybe one of those top 10 players that are going to be really coveted in this class, maybe they slip into the mid teens. Could the Bills make a really aggressive move going up? And I do think that this is one of those few options that's there. If they do stick and pick, I mean, some of the players that might be targeting a wide receiver, we don't know what's going to happen, who's going to be wide receiver one, where they're going to fall in the draft order. Could Tetairoa McMillan fall to the Bills? Maybe. I doubt it, but that's a possibility. Matthew Golden, another player that's probably going to go a little bit before, but both those players could be potential move up targets. And then you talk about Emeka Ibuka from Ohio State. That could be a fun slot fit, maybe a little redundant with what they have with Khalil Shakir. Luther Burden III would certainly be very exciting, and they don't quite have that explosiveness on this team. So I think that could be an interesting fit. At defensive line, you talk about Walter Nolan, Darius Alexander from Toledo. Maybe Oregon's Derek Harmon slides a little bit and falls into Buffalo's lap. I'm sure they'd love that. At edge, you have Marshall's Mike Green, James Pierce Jr. from Tennessee, Donovan Ezraku. Linebackers probably out of the range of a Jihad Campbell or Jalen Walker, but maybe they could move up for one of those players. Carson Schlesinger from UCLA is definitely in play here. And then corner, Trey Amos, Azare Thomas, Maxwell Harrison, Darian Porter, Siobhan Rowell Jr., a lot of names that could potentially be really, really good fits for Buffalo. So you talked about the needs. I talked about the players. Who do you think the Bills should be targeting when we get to pick 30?
It's going to be fascinating. And Luther Burden isn't a player that I've considered for them. But when you threw out that name, I was like, okay, like that could be an electric element to add to their offense. And it's fun because we've heard that Josh Allen is the player that likes to do all the mock drafts like on his own time and then text those to the GM there. And so it's just fun to think about, like, who is the weapon that Josh Allen is just obsessed with sending those mock drafts. And maybe that is someone like Luther Burden. Like, you totally see that. But this feels like a sneaky team for someone like Walter Nolan, the defensive lineman. They could use a little bit more from their defensive line group. And if Nolan were to fall, maybe the Bills make some sense to stop that slide. I can see Carson Schlesinger as well. You mentioned him there, but I feel like they could have their pick of some of the corners here. It feels like maybe there's a little bit of a gap in the draft between the top couple of corners and then this next group of guys. And maybe that this is where, like, potentially the Bills could kind of have their pick of who they feel like is the next best corner between, like you mentioned, Trey Amos, Ezra Thomas, Max Harrison, that kind of a group. It feels like corner makes a ton of sense for Buffalo as well. So still a lot of intrigue around what the Bills are going to do when they're on the clock here.
Yeah, and so we talked about Christian Benford. You also mentioned earlier Taron Johnson, Dane Jackson. The Bills historically don't really care that much about getting like super fast corners. They want big, they want physical, they want aggressive guys with good ball skills. And so, you mentioned Trey Amos. I think that is a very interesting fit in a Sean McDermott defense. And I think that would give the Bills what they were hoping for when they took Kyer Elam in the first round. Walter Nolan, I feel like I'm just stealing names from you here, but I promise I'm not. Walter Nolan just screams Buffalo defense. And I think if he made it to 30, that would be someone Sean McDermott would love to try to develop into a serious threat on the defensive line. Walter Nolan is a guy who is risky as a prospect, but if he pans out, could end up being the best defensive lineman in this class.
Mm-hmm.
So, with that kind of upside, with a coach who has been as successful as Sean McDermott in developing these defensive line players, I think that is another player who really makes a lot of sense. So a lot of good fits. It's going to be interesting.
A lot of good fits. We just really like Ole Miss players for this Buffalo team is what we're telling you. So tune in at the end of the first round to see what Buffalo does when they are, in fact, on the clock. Thanks for joining us. Make sure you like and subscribe to the show and stick with us as we preview all 32 teams in this series leading up to the 2025 NFL Draft. From the draft room to the gridiron, the Draft Fellows have got you covered. Until next time, stay tuned and stay in the game.